Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head up to Ellon in Aberdeenshire once again, which many of you will know is the home of Brewdog, which was one of my kind of regular haunts when I was studying up in Aberdeen, the Brewdog bar in Aberdeen of course. But today we're going to review the fourth and final instalment from the Brewdog Russian Doll series. So this one is the Barley one, and I've been very impressed with the other ones in the series so far, the Pale Ale, the IPA and the Double IPA, so I've got very high hopes for this one as well. But the whole point behind this 4-pack is essentially to educate the beer drinker with regards to how you can alter the malt to hops ratio in a beer and how that can really affect the flavour and even the style of the beer. They do a similar thing with their IPA is Dead and the Unleash the Yeast series, and also the Paradox ones. The whole idea behind these 4-packs and experimental beers that they do is to educate the beer drinker about all the different variables that go into the brewing process. So a very, very cool idea that Brewdog have kind of pioneered over the last little while, and the beers are very, very good. You can trust me on that one. But anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through a very brief history of the brewery. It will only be a minute or two long, but if you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. The brewery website's in the video description for you below, along with a link to my other reviews that I've done from Brewdog before, and you can rest assured that I will add to that in the very near future. I do have a little bit of a stockpile of Brewdog beer, and they're always producing new ones as well. They're quite a prolific brewery. But anyway, to tell you about the brewery itself, Brewdog is the love child of James Watt and Martin Dickey, who founded this brewery back in 2007, and the original brewery site was actually in Fraserburgh in the very northeast of Scotland, a very small brewery in the Keswick Industrial Estate. But more recently, I think it was back in 2012 or 2013, they moved their main brewing operations to their new and purpose-built facility in Ellon, which is actually a bit closer to the city of Aberdeen. But these guys are known for being a very experimental craft brewery, and they were known particularly for a period of time for their strong beers, the Tactical Nuclear Penguin, Sink the Bismarck, and also the End of History, and they won awards for these, and they're actually very, very tasty. They were the strongest beers in the world as soon as they were produced, actually, because this whole thing was done due to a competition with Schwarzbräu from Germany. But they're not really trying to compete for the strongest beer anymore, which is a shame because they were doing really quite well at it, I think. But anyway, these guys really are influenced by the American craft brewing renaissance, and they say themselves that stone brewing in California was their main influence. So with Brewdog you'll always get a very malt forward beer if you're looking at the darker side of things, or a very hop forward beer. So really full of flavour beers, which is exactly what you want from a craft beer. But these days the Brewdog have a very kind of thriving chain of brew pubs. This started in 2009 with the Home Bar in Aberdeen, which was one of my regular haunts. They expanded in 2010 down to Edinburgh and Glasgow, and then all throughout England. Pretty much every major city in England has a Brewdog bar these days, and now they've got sites in Stockholm and Gothenburg in Sweden. I believe they've got a few in Italy, one in Barcelona in Spain. Oslo is the new one they've opened up. And they also have one over in Tokyo in Japan and Sao Paulo in Brazil, and they're constantly expanding this, and they are actually opening up a new brewery in Columbus, Ohio as well. So the American viewers out there can actually expect a good bit more coming from Brewdog your way, and I'm sure the first brew pubs will actually appear over the next little while too. So very, very cool, and a lot of the strategy behind this, it's very interesting how Brewdog have actually grown their business, because they're running their scheme which is called Equity for Punks, and essentially fans of the brewery like you and I can buy into the brewery. You buy shares in the brewery in exchange for a lifetime discount in the shop and also in the bars, and this allows them to fund their infrastructure. So this was how they funded their new facility at Ellon, which is a really impressive place actually. You should really go and visit it if you do come to Scotland, and it's also how they're funding their place out in Columbus and many of their brew pubs actually too. So very, very cool how they've actually managed to grow their business through social media, as is the modern way. But they're actually, from being a very small brewery, they've now become the largest independently owned Scottish craft brewery. So Brewdog are a really quite interesting success story of Scottish kind of food and drink. So a very, very interesting company, and they are producing some very good beers. So anyway, to tell you about the series of Russian Doll beers, the Russian Doll, as I told you, is the latest in the series of Brewdog's experimental brews, and these are designed to teach beer drinkers about the different aspects of brewing. So they already had their IPA is Dead series, which are single hop IPAs all on the same base beer, just with a different hop that teach you how every hop can taste a little bit different. They also had their Unleash the Yeast yeast series which tested the use of different yeast strains on top of identical base worts, and this could dramatically change the style. There was the Czech Pilsen, the Bavarian Weizen, and all of these sort of things in there. That was a really cool series. But they also have their Paradox Imperial Stout beer, and this is when they experiment with barrel aging. So all of these Imperial Stouts are aged in different whisky casks. You had the Arran one, the Jura one, there was Smokehead, Compass Point, and Heaven Hill, I think, are the ones that they've done. So all of these beers taste different, and it's really interesting how the different whisky infused woods can really affect the flavour of these beers. But to tell you more about the Russian Dolls, the Russian Dolls are a little bit different because all 4 beers have the same 4 hop varieties and the same malt bill and identical water and yeast. And in this series, essentially, they're altering the ratios and volumes of malt to hops in order to produce 4 different styles of beer. So as you've seen me review before, there's the Pale Ale, the IPA, the Double IPA, and then this guy here, the Barley Wine. So all of the beers are hopped with Simcoe, Centennial, Cascade, and Citra hops from America, and the malt bill consists of pale, dark crystal, and caramels. And the pale malts provide the sugars in all of the 4 beers. However, the dark crystal and caramels are used far more heavily in the Double IPA and the Barley Wine, as you would expect, and this is why you get a kind of bigger and boozy feel from these flavours. So that kind of tells you exactly what they're going for with this series here. But without further ado, let's get stuck into this guy, because I'm very excited to try this one, because I really do love a good barley wine, and I've been very impressed with the other series that the other beers in this series that they've done. So this one comes in at 10%. As I told you, it's got a malt base of pale, dark crystal, and caramels, and it's Simcoe, Citra, Centennial, and Cascade hops that's in this one. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is slightly different. It's designed by a woman called Esther McManus. It looks almost a little bit more McKellar-esque. You can see one of the older Brewdog bottle caps on this one. I believe this series was released in 2014, in the autumn sometime in 2014. But just to read the little blurb on the side of this, as I always do, this one says, Russian Doll Barley Wine, 4 beers, 4 styles, 1 DNA. We've taken the natural progression of 4 of our favourite styles and lined them up like a Matryoshka doll to create a series of beers, each one stronger and more intense than the last. Beers this different, brewed from the same malts and hops, make you question the big things in life. What is my natural essence? What is it that makes me? And if I could peel my own face off and look inside, would I find a punchier, more intense version of me staring back? Welcome to our Russian Doll. Just don't try to put the bottles inside each other. These are clever beers for clever humans. So yeah, very nice sounding beer, very nice hops in it. So without further ado, let's get this guy open and we'll get on with the tasting here. The other beers in this series really have been quite beautiful, actually. This hop blend and malt blend that they've done in these really is something quite special, actually. The Double IPA was really interesting because to me it reminded me of the Hello My Name Is series, but obviously it just didn't have that kind of unusual fruit that they like to put in there. That's another way that they experiment. The Hello My Name Is series is a double IPA series where they put the likes of ligonberries, cloudberries and blueberries and all of these sort of things in the beer. So that's another very cool way that Brewdog like to experiment. So as you can see, this beer is poured a really nice kind of, almost a kind of dark sort of chestnutty colour actually. There's a kind of half finger of a frothy, slightly beigey or kind of creamy coloured head on this one, but it looks very nice. It's not transparent at all. If I put my fingers behind it, you can just see a little bit of transparency down here at the narrow point in the glass, but it's definitely a nice kind of hazy, slightly reddish chestnut colour there. Very, very nice looking. There's some big bubbles just sticking towards the side of the glass, but a lot of little ones just going up towards the bottom of the head there, so it looks a very, very nice beer. This of course isn't the full bottle. This one's only a half pint glass, but I chose it because it's Brewdog obviously, and I'm reviewing a Brewdog beer. So let's give this guy a smell and see how we get on here. So as you would expect from the barley wine style, you've got a huge, big, quite roasted caramel malt in there. It's almost bordering on sort of molasses or treacle as well actually, but it smells really, really nice. So a nice big dark caramel, slightly toasted, almost roasted caramel malt in here. A little bit of the kind of the sort of treacly and molasses definitely in there too, a darker element to the malt. But you can definitely pick up a little bit of a kind of cakey or slightly rye breadish feel to this one in the aroma too. Big kind of sweet cakey and bready, it's almost cerealish character to this one, but it's quite mild. It's just a kind of nice sweet cakey aroma in the background there. But there's a big kind of candied and red fruit presence in this. And I want to say it's more raisiny and plummy than figgy. The figgy notes always come over as being a little bit smoother, but the plums and raisins do come out a little bit sharper. and this has quite a bit of that kind of darker, sharper note that you would get from plums and raisins, so it smells very nice. And you can definitely pick up just a little bit of the tropical fruits. You would expect tropical fruit from the likes of the Citra and the Simcoe and the Cascade hop there. Centennial's more of a bittering hop with a big aromatic character to it. But you can smell just a little bit of piney resin coming off this too. You are getting the dusty character from the hops. So it's a very interesting smelling beer, this one. Big boozy malt, as you would expect, but some nice, really nice red candied fruits in there as well. So without further ado, let's get stuck into this guy and give it a go. So this is the barley wine in the Russian Doll series from Brewdog. It comes in at 10% with a lot of nice hops and a lot of nice malt. So slanja. That's really quite nice actually. The fruit's not as prominent as you would think when you're going through the aroma of this beer. Yeah, you've got a nice big dark caramelly malt in this one, which is exactly what you would expect. It really is going along the lines of treacle and molasses, and the whole idea with the way I've reviewed these beers, I've gone from weakest to strongest as they suggest. So the barley wine, of course, is the one that will have the highest concentration of caramel and dark crystal in there, so you can really get a little hint of that kind of roasted character in there and the big dark boozy malt base. And of course at 10% you are going to get a good kind of nice big caramel treacly boozy molasses feel in this one. It's really, really nicely done. So that kind of just blankets the tongue there. You can pick up just a little bit of the kind of pale malt that's in there too, so that just blankets the tongue. But on top of that, this one you have a really dark kind of big roasted and quite sweet actually at the same time, a big roasted boozy slightly treacly caramel flavour that just goes in there. It almost forms a U shape on your tongue, you'll just notice that. And in the middle of the tongue you've got just a little bit of dry character in there, a kind of slightly dry kind of toasted bread character. You just notice that. It's a little bit cereally, if that makes sense. So it's quite an interesting little aspect to the flavour there. Yeah, it is a little bit, there is a kind of cakey, a sort of cake flavour to this one, and that goes right down that middle of the tongue there as well. So it's really, really nice, but you've got this big boozy and sweet caramel in there. It's really beautifully done. It's not, this isn't quite as fruity as some of the barley wine ales that I've come across before, but it's very, very nice nonetheless. It's a nice big dark boozy caramel beer. I keep saying that, but it's beautifully done. So with the fruits of this one, around the edges of the tongue, that's where you're getting the hoppy characteristics of this one. So you've got a nice slightly juicy red fruit character in there, and that's where you're getting sort of figs and raisins and plums. So even though the aroma is a bit more plummy and raisiny, I would say that the fruit flavours in this one are a bit more figgy, if that makes sense. Yeah. When the liquid is actually still in your mouth, you're definitely getting a bit of the tropical fruit flavour coming out. There's a good bit of grapefruit in there, and a kind of grapefruit and orange mixed character in there. And then as you progress into the aftertaste, you're getting that nice smooth figgy character just right around the front edges of the tongue. You can pick up just a little bit of slightly aromatic and pine resiny hop around the edges of your tongue. I believe that's the Simcoe and the sort of Centennial that's coming out around the back sides of the tongue, if that makes sense. But around the very front, it's more of a figgy flavour, quite a smooth figgy flavour. But you get this little oily bubble that forms just behind the very front of your tongue, and you get a big orangey kind of flavour out of there. And there's some tropical kind of sour fruits in there, a little bit of grapefruit and a little bit of peachy character in there as well. So just pay attention to that as you're tasting this beer. But overall, it does taste very nice. I'll just put the last little bit of this into the glass. But a very, very nice tasting beer, this one, I have to say. And quite different from the other barley wines I've come across from Brewdog. I think the last one was the Shipwrecker Circus, and that was really good. That was an Oscar Blues collaboration, and it was quite a fruity one. This one is more focused on the malts, which is the whole point of what they're trying to do here. But one thing you'll notice with this, as you do progress with it, the hops do become gradually more prominent as your mouth adjusts to it, so you get a bit more of that tropical fruit in there, and the smooth figgy flavours come out a little bit more too, particularly in the aftertaste. And as I say, you're getting that nice grassy aromatic-y flavour around the back sides of the tongue, and there's a bit of pine resin in there too, but it's quite smooth, not quite as sharp and dry as sometimes you would expect from the style. But yeah, really interesting mix of flavours this one. It's really quite nicely done actually, a very, very enjoyable barley wine ale. So in terms of the mouthfeel of this one, I'd definitely say quite full-bodied this, a big boozy beer as you would expect, and what they're trying to show you essentially is how the malt to hop ratios can affect this, and this is 10%. The first one that I did was 4%, the pale ale, I believe the IPA was 6, the double IPA was 8, and this one is 10, so they're going up each time, and you can really feel the taste, the difference in taste with these beers. But it's the thing to remember is it's the same base beer, it's the same ingredients, and they're just altering the ratios and showing you how this can change the style. So it's really cool actually, and it's quite interesting with the hops how when the malt is a bit more prominent, as is the case in this beer, it becomes a little bit more sort of resinous red fruits that come out rather than the tropical fruits. So very interesting in that regard. But yeah, this beer is quite full bodied, it's got a nice kind of smooth carbonation, but it comes in with a little bit of a tack, and that brings out some of the citrusy and slightly tropical fruits there in the flavour as well. But you've got a big boozy malt base as you would expect. There's a lot of alcohol warmth in this beer, and you just feel it down your chest there. But it's a nice big, quite hoppy and quite juicy character as well, and it's almost syrupy in the mouthfeel too. But the most important thing is that this beer tastes really good, and this whole series of beer, if you do them consecutively, they really will teach you. You really will see that you'll get the same fruit flavours out of them, and gradually the malt, the caramel and the dark crystal becomes a bit more prominent, and that's, you really notice the slightly roasted character and the big dark the caramel sweetness getting a lot darker. So it's a very interesting series that does exactly what they've intended it to, in my opinion, and along the way you're getting some really nice tasting beers. Some of the best ones actually that Brewdog have done, I think. The IPA was particularly nice. That's one of the best IPAs they've done, and the pale ale I think is even better than the Dead Pony, and the double IPA was a really interesting one because it was very similar, as I say, to the Hello My Name Is series, and this is different from any barley wine ale they've done. So all the beers that they've done in this series are unique within their own right, so definitely worth checking out if you can still get a hold of the Russian Dolls. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. It's been cool to do another 4-pack from these guys and see exactly what they're trying to teach you. I've really enjoyed the beers in this series, some nice American hops and some really nice big malts in there. But as always, let me know in the comment section below your own thoughts on this beer. I hope you've enjoyed the review, and please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. I will be back soon with more Brewdog reviews, but in the meantime I've got some other interesting things to do for you, so slàinte for now.